Hi everyone, welcome back to By Design Undivided. I'm super pleased to have with me today Blair McPherson and Lauren Perry from Studio Como, a relatively new studio based in Los Angeles. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today.
Of course. Thank you.
The topic today is going to be a few different things, but the thrust of it's going to be talking about how your firm, a very new firm, started pretty recently, just before the coronavirus pandemic hit, is coping through this time. And we're also going to talk about technology, because in the midst of this, you've decided to switch from 2D full into BIM 3D. What was the genesis of Studio Como? What made you decide to go in partnership together? And when did you found the firm?
We've always worked for wonderful mentors, and we're also doing that last year at about this time. But we were both separately recruited to look at positions again at a large firm. And through that process, we both individually realized that we didn't really want to work for somebody else again, that we were ready to work for ourselves and build a studio in our own vision. We both have a lot of experience through our career so far in projects that are large commercial projects all the way down to small residential. And moving forward with Studio Como, we are focusing on hospitality and restaurant work. And we actually have a fair amount of work in the boutique fitness sector, which we've seen grow in the past few years. We're really taking a look at everything, literally at every level and every task within a project and just firm operations. Would you say that's pretty close, Lauren?
I think that's pretty close. I mean, having my own firm has always been in the back of my mind. You know, when Blair started mentioning this idea and we were both talking about the recruiting process, and we were just like, is this crazy? Should we do this? And people told us, yes, it is crazy. But we did it anyway.
Let's say we officially made the decision last fall, and we officially planted our flag as Studio Como in January 2020.
When we spoke earlier, you mentioned that in firm life, you felt pigeonholed or prevented from doing some of the things that you really wanted to do. Was that a motivational factor for you to start Studio Como?
When you work for somebody else, and even the people who work for us, you know, there's a need that needs to be filled. There's a position that has skills and tasks that need to be accomplished, and you get hired into a position. And in a large firm, that's usually a bit of a narrower definition. And in a small firm, it's a bit more all hands on deck. You know, everybody does everything. And we realize that while it's a little bit crazier in some ways, we really like that. Doing financial projections to concept sketches to presentations and material selections and detail drawing and construction meetings, like we really actually both enjoy all of it.
The places we've worked and the people we've worked with, especially most recently, we've been able to stretch and not be so pigeonholed. Actually, that set us up really well for the transition to having our own firm, is because we knew the ins and outs of running a small firm.
In terms of that vision and wanting to set things up in your own way, what are some of the goals in there? What is it that you wanted to bring to Studio Como that was moving on from what you've experienced before or what you had learned from?
We both have always been really interested in technology and the process by which we design. We've been trained in what we call audience-based design, where every project you start by examining the audience that the project is for. It's an anthropological approach, and it's very logical, but we center everything around the audience. So, you know, who's the user group, what's important to them, what's regionally different, and then also you're, of course, talking to the client and meeting their needs.
Architecture is for everybody, and it makes me personally a little sad when you see design that I don't even know if you can call design, because nobody thought it through, which all kind of does tie back to the audience-based design that we've come up on. It helps it not be so zeitgeisty. You know, yes, we might tap into the zeitgeist, which is great, and being on the forefront of trends, but lasting a long time and not feeling dated or no longer being functional is very important.
I mean, one thing that's come up already quite often is the idea of mentorship. How were the two of you mentored? What was that experience like for you? And how then are you bringing mentorship into the central culture of Studio Como?
We both actually had the same early mentor. It was a woman, and she handled a lot of construction and worked with a lot of contractors and was in a very male environment. And it was very interesting and wonderful to kind of see how she handled those situations. One of the reasons that she was so successful in her position and she trained us to do was that your documentation is really important, and it needs to be really tight, and it needs to be really good. And then that plus always being problem-solving approach rather than an adversarial approach, especially with a contractor. That caricature of the architect historically kind of puts you up against the contractor rather than alongside them. She didn't ever approach things like that.
50% of women like leave the workforce. They either go to other fields or they just leave and don't come back. How we're translating that into like how we run our firm and how we want to mentor is female-run team can work. But now we want to be visible with that and be like an example to show other young women that they can do that, or other men who are not used to working with women in leadership. One of our employees right now, she has goals of having her own firm. Like she's already established that, and she's like just out of school, and she's like so stoked to be, working with a female-run startup. And I'm like, oh, it's so great. Like I feel good that she's excited for that.
You started in January. Within 60 days, coronavirus, the world turns upside down, but you're still busy. How have things gone through this period for you?
Yeah, we're thankfully, yes, very busy. We're mostly busy right now with projects that are under construction. Some of our projects, they're recognizing like this is the perfect time to spend a little bit more time on design work. Things are going to change, and we recognize that. For the time being, it's not really impacting what we're pursuing or what we're doing so much as things are just moving a little bit slower.
We're going to start to see more of a change in the schedules over the summer. For example, we have a project that is slated to start construction inside the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. It's closed right now. So whether or not the owner is going to allow the contractors to start work at all, or even if Las Vegas, the county in general, is allowing construction, I'm not even sure. So we're in permitting, and we would typically start construction in the next few months, but we don't know if we will. To them, it's still valuable to work on the design and kind of work out what their brand concept will be that they can build in other locations. And they may just never build this one and move on to the next.
Was there a moment that you might have thought that, oh my gosh, the timing's wrong, we've made a tragic error? Did you also feel like, well, actually, being independent, having the size and the dexterity and the model that you have, that you felt actually sort of better placed than you might have been had you still been employed?
I graduated in 2008 and she did in 2009. And so we've seen this before. It's a slightly different storm, but that was traumatic for the architecture field. The firm that I worked for at the time lost close to 50% of staff, and my office went from 72 people to 11. We know what it looks like to downsize and rebuild, and we know how to do it. We need to, but being small does make us more nimble, and so we appreciate that our size is helpful in this time.
Every decision is just a decision, right? It's not good or bad, and failing isn't bad either. I don't know, I think there's some sensibility about it. I don't think it's ever a mistake to take a risk and do something that you've always wanted to do.
When you started, you were a 2D firm, correct?
2D for technical documentation. We did rely pretty heavily on 3D modeling for explaining designs to clients and visualization.
But now you're moving wholesale into BIM with Archicad. I suppose the $1 million question is, why now? Why this moment?
Starting a new firm is a great opportunity. Like, we're resetting our templates, we're questioning everything. So it might seem like a crazy time considering the pandemic, but as far as switching software and going like wholesale into Archicad, starting a new firm seems like the best time to do that for us because we're in the midst of a bunch of change anyway.
We've worked with BIM software before, knew the value of it, and have spent the last several years in a smaller firm using 2D again. Being able to go one way and then come back, it really highlighted a lot of the challenges and limitations that 2D has. And we would push our SketchUp models and how we can use them in documentation as far as possible, because just living in 3D and designing in 3D was just where we all felt comfortable and natural. now that we were in charge, we got to do it. We were eager to switch back to a BIM program.
Given the fact that you had previous experience in Revit, why not just take the safe bet, kind of stick with what you know? Why Archicad over the software that you knew?
Lauren and I both, for better or worse, really like to challenge ourselves and find not just the common solution to things, but what we think is the best solution. I know Revit is much more popular, but we looked at this program and just liked it better, particularly for front-end design and visualization, which to us is really important in terms of being able to make that happen more quickly and using less programs to do so it's more efficient. If we can manage to do everything in the one software, then your team is much more flexible and you can move a lot faster.
Being able to streamline the process, and also about the story that your documents tell for all parties involved in making the project real. Yeah, we want to be effective and try to be on the forefront of where things are headed next.
Out of crisis comes opportunity. Do you think that it is likely that more architects in your generation, in your peer group, are going to reassess where they are right now?
I think so. I think that is characteristic of our generation in general. And with technology and tools like this, it's easier for people to be able to do that. Like Lauren said, it's always a good idea to take a risk. We'll see a lot of people trying to do their own thing.
How do you see your generation working to advance the AEC industry as we come out of this pandemic and get on with our future?
I think that we'll be more ready and willing to approach how spaces are designed differently. Lauren and I already had some conversations about the restaurant portion of our practice. You know, when you design a successful space, you make people feel a lot of different things. In healthcare, you want people to feel calm and safe and healthy. And in a bar or a restaurant, you really want them to be having a good time and feel good about themselves. Throughout all of architecture now, feeling safe is something that we are going to need to foster through how we design space. Traditionally, in restaurants and bars, people want to be kind of close together. And for the foreseeable future, I think that's actually scary. Every space that's public now is going to need to shift. And that's going to be a partnership that designers need to take with business owners and future and current clients to figure out how we tackle that. Being the point in our careers that we are, having some good experience behind us, but a lot of runway ahead of us, we'll be a lot more nimble and able to have bigger shifts in our thinking.
Yeah, flexibility. I think that's one thing that carries through with our generation especially is flexibility, whether it was forced upon us or intentional choice. I definitely see that carrying through in the design of spaces moving forward because of post-pandemic.
It's fantastic. We all wish you the best of luck. So, Blair, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time. I know how busy you are. For our audience, thank you for joining us. There'll be more episodes of Undivided at graphisoft.com/bydesign. If you'd like to talk to Graphisoft about consulting, their free licensing offer, all the ways they're helping firms through the current crisis, please go to graphisoft.com. You'll find plenty of information. Again, Studio Como, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.